Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna. So today, first of all, we would like to, so on behalf of Evolve Pune team, we would like to give our heartiest wishes on the auspicious day of Gita Jayanti, Mokshada Ekadashi, Vaikuntha Ekadashi. Thank you so much for joining for today's session, which is the 17th session of our Gita Essence series. And in this series, so in the yesterday's session, His Grace Madan Sundar Prabhuji talked about on chapter 16, which was the divine and demonic nature. And in today's, Prabhuji is going to give his discourse on chapter 17th of Bhagavad Gita, which is on the division of faith, Shraddha ke Vibhag, as we say in Hindi. So, without much ado, I request Madan Sundar Prabhuji to take over the session. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, over to you. Prabhuji, you are on mute.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just at the right moment, when I was supposed to go live, they realized there is a technical glitch. So there was a pause. Anyways, Hare Krishna, we welcome you all for today evening discussion, our second last topic, chapter 17th. Today is a very auspicious day. The whole world is celebrating the advent of Bhagavad Gita. And I believe some of you, most of you would have taken part in the chanting of the Bhagavad Gita or the recitations, or would have studied. But we had a great experience. We had two different groups doing Bhagavad Gita recitation today in the morning and afternoon. So without any further ado, so we welcome you once again and we'll offer prayers and start with the program. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatai Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, starting our discussion today, we'll do a very brief recap of chapter 16 that was titled as The Divine and Demonic Nature. Just to give you the flow of discussion, how the discussion is building up to chapter 17th. In chapter 14th, Lord Shri Krishna spoke about that how he is a seed-giving father. Aham bija pradaha pitaha. And then Lord Shri Krishna explains that how this living entity becomes entangled with the material world. Just like a fly gets trapped into the cobweb, similarly all of us are trapped in the web of Maya or the material world. And that web is called as the modes of material nature. Sattvam, Rajas, Tamas, Iti. Thus, Krishna says, they are called as Sattva, Rajas and Tamoguna. And then in chapter 14, Lord Shri Krishna went on to explain the symptoms, the actions, the destinations. In fact, everything, whatever we do in our life, is influenced by the modes of material nature. We think we are independent, but we are slaves of the modes of material nature. We are tied up with the chains and we cannot do anything independently. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna says in 2nd chapter, verse number 45, Krishna tells Arjuna, the purpose of the study of Vedic Shastras is to become free from the bondage of the modes of material nature. And Lord says, I'll just read out this verse. 2nd chapter, verse number 45. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigунyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvandu Nitya Sattvastu Niryoga Shema Atmavan. This was 2nd chapter, verse number 45. So Lord Shri Krishna says, the Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes. O Arjuna, Nistrai Gurnyo Bhava Arjuna, become transcendental or break the chains of the modes of material nature. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So here Lord Shri Krishna explains briefly, and now 14th chapter onward, Lord Shri Krishna goes into the detail of the subject matter of how you can set yourself free. And Krishna at the conclusion of the 14th chapter says, Mamachayo abhyabhicharinena bhakti yogena sevate. One who engages into my devotional service but naturally becomes freed from the influence of the modes of material nature. So like that, Lord Shri Krishna concludes 14th chapter. And then chapter 15 begins where Lord Shri Krishna begins to speak further of how to cultivate detachment from this world. Because we are part of this world because we are attached to this world. We are attached to the fruits of our action. We have so many material desires. So then Lord Shri Krishna begins to talk about this world to be a place of temporary compared with the banyan tree, which is a reflection of the original tree, which is there in the spiritual world. Like that, the discussion goes on. And Krishna explains, Arjuna, I am the maintainer. Please understand, I am the one who maintains the gross body, the subtle body, and the spiritual life of every individual. Krishna tells Arjuna that there's a spiritual world. One who do not attain it, they continue to go through the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease like that. And finally, Lord Shri Krishna concludes for 15th chapter, again with the same subject matter. Take shelter, render devotional service. Bhakti Yoga is the highest. And then 16th chapter begins where Lord Shri Krishna now begins to talk about there are two kinds of living entities. One is called Sura and Asura. And what is the deciding factor who's Sura and who's Asura? Whoever is born in this world, all the living entities are bound by the modes of material nature. But there is a one living entity who decides not to follow the injunctions of scriptures is called as Asura. Whereas Suras, they live their life according to the injunctions of scriptures. And that's what Bhagavad Gita, chapter number 16, verse number 23 concludes, where the 16th chapter ends, where Krishna says, Ye shastra vistam usrajya vartate kamakaratah Nasa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. Arjuna, those who do not follow scriptures or scripture injunctions, neither they attain happiness in this life, nor they attain perfection of life, nor they attain any good destination in the next life. Like this, Lord Shri Krishna is taking the discussion, and now the 17th chapter begins, where Arjuna inquires. 17th chapter begins with the inquiry of Arjuna. And what does Arjuna inquires? Lord, you have said that those who follow scriptures and live their life, they attain to perfection of life. But there are still many people, because we don't have a poll right now, so can I request all of you to be active and say yes or no when I ask a question? So let's see if you're able to understand the flow. Very important. Otherwise, we may not understand what's going on in the 17th chapter. So here Arjuna begins to wonder, my dear Lord, what about those people who believe, who have faith in the worship of somebody? Maybe devatas like Brahma, Shiva, Durga, Ganesh, etc., etc. Or maybe some guru who they consider as God. They have faith in some higher authorities, but they do not do it according to scriptures. What is their destination? What happens with them? How many of you think this is a very vital question for the present society? Because everyone does some worship, have some faith without having understanding of scriptures. Yes or no? This is a very, very prominent and important question for all of us to understand, because who have studied scriptures? Nobody. So Arjuna asked this as an inquiry, and this is how the 17th chapter begins. Ye shastra vidhim usrachya yajante shraddhayan vitaha tesham nishtha tu ka Krishna satvamaho rajasamaha. May I request the host read the translation? Tablet. Hare Krishna. Oh, great. So I'm not sure if the host is there, so I'll read out the translation. Oh Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scripture but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, passion, ignorance? So here it starts a very important discussion, because everyone is governed by the modes. So Arjuna is asking, what about these people, in which mode they are? Now let me ask you, all of you, which is the best mode? What is the mode we are supposed to cultivate? Goodness, passion, ignorance. Which gives the perfection of life? Which makes your present life successful, and of course your destination also great? So, but naturally Arjuna is asking this question. They are worshipping somebody. Is their worship according to mode of goodness, influenced by goodness, passion, ignorance? So that's what the discussion begins. Faith. How is their faith influenced? Please read Mother Dipasha if you can. You are muted. Okay, she probably cannot unmute herself, so I'll read out. Now, if one with faith follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scripture injunctions, what is his position? Are those who create some sort of God by selecting a human being and placing their faith in him, worshipping in goodness, passion, ignorance? Do such persons attain the perfectional stage of life? Please proceed. I believe you can unmute now.
Yes, Prabhuji. Is it possible for them to be situated in real knowledge and elevate themselves to the highest perfectional stage? Do those who do not follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but who have faith in something and worship gods and demigods and men, attain success in their effort? Arjuna is putting these questions to Krishna.
So I feel this is a very, very important discussion. What happens to all these people? You know, there is a Durga Puja, there is Ganesh Puja, Ganesh Chaturthi, there is Kali Puja, then there is pujas of Bhutas, Pretas, Bishashas, then there is Tantric, and then there is pujas, worships of some gurus who are claimed to be gods and whatnot. So in other words, people are putting faith in different things. So what's their destination? What happens to them is what precisely is being discussed in this chapter titled as The Divisions of Faith, chapter 17. In other words, chapter 17 describes how a person's affiliation to a particular mode determines the faith the person has. As we say, association is contagious. Similarly, with the mode of consciousness person associates. I hope you understand the kind of food we eat, the kind of music we hear, they all are divided or they all are classified according to the modes of consciousness. So the kind of activities we engage into, we strengthen a particular mode, and according to that, persons develops a faith. Our faith is also determined according to the mode of consciousness, which means even, not which means, in fact, the point is everyone lives their life according to some faith. Even the atheist, those who do not believe in God, they also have a faith that God does not exist. They are also not without the faith. Yes or no? So, what is the basis of their faith? Which mode of consciousness their faith is situated? How somebody within the same family you find somebody develops a faith God doesn't exist, whereas other person says God exists. It depends a lot. Or it, in fact, entirely depends on by which mode of consciousness is this person controlled. And accordingly, we'll see why in world today we have so many religions is nothing but according to the faith cultivated by a follower, and accordingly they choose a particular religion which is in goodness, passion, and tamoguna. So let's begin this interesting discussion. Let's give the acronym for this chapter, which is FACE, face. Let's start with the first letter, F for faith. Although religious people are often referred to as the person or the people of faith, that's what we call Shraddhavan. The religious people are said to be Shraddhavan. They are the people who have faith. And the people who believe in science, they are said to be logical. Well, that's not fact. Everyone lives their life according to faith. Just like even a scientist, when he's flying in an airplane, doesn't he has a faith that the pilot knows how to fly? And the pilot have taken a proper rest before, taking to this journey, yes or no? What is the logic there? I remember when I was working in my occupation as a research engineer, and I'll not go into much details of it because of the nature of my job in terms of research. But in Middle East at that point of time, there was a big crisis. There were some big security lapses that had happened at the senior government level, for which we were involved to resolve, identify, and resolve the case. And we had very short time, and I was leading a team for that time. And when we started working on it, we found out the service provider, the mobile service provider, he had intentionally pushed out an update to all his smartphone users, which was not an update, but a malware. Not a malware, but a spyware. But that spyware was not configured properly, and as soon as he pushed out the spyware as an update, when the people downloaded the update, immediately all the data from the smartphone was captured. Their emails, the phone calls were recorded, their text messages, the photos were stolen, and they were sent to a server located in America, details excluded. Now, when we did this research, it took some time to figure it out and all that. And then I began to wonder at that point of time, why people downloaded that update? But it's just a simple thing. Because they had a faith in the service provider, yes or no? The message came from a service provider. They never thought this is what's going to happen. So you are a scientist, you are a religious person, it doesn't matter. The life is governed by faith, and that's the point. We all put faith. When you go to meet a doctor, we don't doubt a doctor. So faith means, or where we put faith means, it's something where we see an opportunity, where we feel will be a reward of value in something. Even though we may not have an experience of it, but our faith develops according where we see any opportunity for our growth, for our safety. So, according to our faith, according to our own personal individual faith, people develop worldviews. That's the reason you'll find all this kind of differing worldviews, which more or less predominantly today is spoken in the context of the left worldview and the right worldview. You getting the point? And similarly, everyone lives a lifestyle, has a particular lifestyle, has a particular trait, which again comes from the subject matter of what they believe in, what they put faith in. Those who strongly believe that taking to a spiritual life is going to give them happiness, they become very determined in that path. It all begins with faith. Those who think God consciousness makes your life boring, it just spoils your whole worldly pleasures, they have a lot of faith in worldly pleasures, thus they'll never take into spiritual life. All are subject matter of faith. Similarly, there are different religions in the world. What is the basis of different religions? Again, the basis of all different religions is different kind of faith originating because of the influence of different modes. Prabhupada writes a beautiful purport. Please read if our host is there. So we find different types of faith in this world, and there are different types of religion due to different types of faith. The real principle of religious faith is situated in the mode of pure goodness. But because the heart is tainted, we find different types of religious principles. Thus, according to the different types of faith, there are different kinds of worship. So how do we acquire faith? That's the whole idea, is based on the faith that we have. People understand different religious principles. So how do we acquire faith? Prabhupada writes further about it. How do we acquire faith? Prabhupada says, everyone has a particular type of faith, regardless of what he is, but his faith is considered good, passionate, or ignorant, according to the nature he has acquired. And thus, according to his particular type of faith, one associates with certain persons. In essence, the kind of influence of modes we have, that determines the faith that we'll have. And according to the faith, we develop certain inclinations in life, and accordingly we follow our life. Now, do you see the religions, the predominant religions in the world divided according to Sattva, Rajo, Tamagun? Yes or no? Krishna speaks about it. Arjuna, because of different faith under the influence of modes, there are different types of worship. Text number 4. What is this different types of worship? Yajante satvika devan. The mode of goodness worship where people worship devatas as being authorized in the Vedic scriptures. Not that they make any man as God, but devatas like Indra, Vayu, Varana, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Vishnu worship. This is all in Sattvika, mode of goodness. Yaksha Raksham Shirajasaha. In the mode of passion, people worship demons. Pretam Bhuta Ganam Chanye. And in mode of ignorance, people worship Bhuta Preta Pishashas. And Yajante Tamasa Janaha. So, type of worship depending on a type of faith. Now, people worship the demons in mode of passion. What is the meaning of it? It refers to people worshipping, those who declare themselves God, man becoming a God. And what is the idea behind it? I go and pray to him, drop some money in the hundi, and he gives me some kind of chuna, what they call it, rak or something, or the powder comes out from the head, or the chuna lagata hai, and all our problems gets fixed. You might have seen a lot of videos around where some pastors, they show that, you do this and that and will fix your physical disease or the mental disease and whatnot. So this is what refers to Rajasic worship. Pretan Bhuta Ganam Chanye, Tamasic worship refers to where people are into tantric kind of practices, tantric yoga. Similarly, people are into the worship of Bhuta Pret. This actually happens in villages, where people make all kind of sacrifices just to get some of their desires fulfilled from these kind of personalities. So there are all kind of worships available. Now, I cannot publicly discuss too much on the subject, but I would like you to think about it for a second. Our modern religions, and let's talk about Abrahamic religion for that reason. What do you think, in which type of worship, which kind of mode does what we know of Islamic faith today, or does the Christianity comes into? I'm not talking about in its original content. I'm talking about the kind of practitioners that we know of today, the kind of practices people follow. In which kind of mode do you think? You can use the chat box to reply, and then I'll let you know what's the answer for it. So in essence, Srila Prabhupada sums up the discussion as follows. The worship of faith, according to goodness, people worship devatas, according to the description given in Shastras, and accordingly they advance in spiritual life. Whereas in passion, they worship demons, and their idea of worshipping demons or man declaring self-made gods is to get some their fruitive desires fulfilled. And ignorance, ghosts, spirits, and the faith in irreligious activities like that, these are the ways people have different kinds of worships. Just like Kali Puja. Now, in which mode of consciousness Kali Puja comes, where they sacrifice all kinds of animals? Kali Puja is characterized by the killing of animals, slaughtering of animals, particularly goat. It's a big festival that happens in Bihar, in that kind of area, and also in Bengal. That's Tamoguna worship, where you're causing, so much harm to living entity. So, like this, different kinds of worship based on consciousness, Krishna explains. Similarly, Lord proceeds ahead and explains, Arjuna, even the food that we intake is according to the mode of consciousness. I will put the subject matter in a reverse direction. The liking that you have for a particular kind of food, which you're going to discuss here, that Krishna describes, indicates which mode is most prominent on you. So let's see what is a food in the mode of goodness. Ayusatva balarogya sukha priti vivardanaha rasya snigdha sthira hritya ahara satvika priyaha. So if it can be read now, so you may.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, great.
Food that increases lifespan and heart becomes purified gives strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such foods are juicy, fatty, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart.
So, what is a food in the mode of goodness? Fresh vegetables, fresh grains, freshly cooked vegetarian diet, milk products. These are all said to be the food in mode of goodness. Now you will see and understand why most of the spiritual forums, assumingly they should, but actually this is what is a culture where their food is sattvic, not too spicy, not too stale, freshly cooked, and of course non-vegetarian is out of question. So in the certain religions where non-veg is allowed to be consumed, how can you cultivate goodness? Are those practitioners of those religions beyond the influence of the modes? Are they outside of it? If somebody is consuming flesh, which we'll discuss in a short while, which is in Tamoguna, if they are cultivating Tamoguna, if their religion is talking about Tamoguna, so you can imagine what kind of worship it would be. It would be Tamoguna worship. And the result of Tamoguna worship, the person causes distress to oneself and also causes harm to others, as we just discussed an example. So this is the food in the mode of goodness. When somebody consumes this food, the person cultivates goodness. What happened with the food in the mode of passion? Katau amal lavanati ushna tikshna ruksha vidhaniha ahara rajas sasyeshta dukha shoka maya pradaha. Rajasic food would make you cry. We had recent experience in the last 1 week. Of course, that was offered to the Lord and all that, no doubt about it. But one of our devotee from South India was visiting us, and he cooked. Particularly from Andhra, he is, and he cooked. And all our devotees were in ecstasy, crying tears. When I went there, I was wondering maybe they're crying out of the, they're loving the food, or maybe they're experiencing the joy of Krishna consciousness. None of them told me what's the reality. When I ate, when I started to cry, then I understood the reason of the ecstatic symptoms. The food was super hot, super spicy. So anyways, too much chili powder. So please read out. So that's what dukha shoka maya. It makes your life miserable. Please read out.
Food that causes distress, misery, and disease. Such foods are too bitter, too sour, salty, very hot, pungent, dry, and burning.
So the idea of the food is to increase longevity. It should be pleasurable. So here it could be a vegetarian diet, but if it is too spicy hot, it causes indigestion, it causes problems, suffering to the body, and most importantly, it causes increase of mode of passion. And you know what mode of passion is identified with? Lot of greed and lust, insatiable lust. And like this, person cannot stay focused in his duties or also in his devotional service. What about the foods in the mode of ignorance? Yatayamam gata rasam purti paryusitam chayat Uchishtham api chamedhyam bhojanam tamasa priyam.
Food that are prepared more than 3 hours before eating. Food that are tasteless, decomposed, and putrid. Food that are consisting of remnants and untouchable.
So, even vegetarian diet, which is cooked 3 hours and more or before, after that becomes food in the ignorance. And the exception of the to the rule is prasadam. Prasadam can be consumed at any point of time. Now, food that are tasteless, decomposed, and putrid, and of course, all non-vegetarian food comes into tamoguna. Now, are you able to see this whole connection with those consuming meat and then themselves calling themselves to be religious? What is their destination? What is their practice? Now, the people in Tamoguna do not know what is right, what is wrong. For them, what is right for Satvaguna is wrong for them. They consider day to be night and night to be a day. And their lifestyle is only meant for self abuse and causing destruction for others. I guess hints are enough for you to understand why we have so much crisis in the world today on the name of religion. Because prominent religions in the world today are acting either on the mode of passion or in the mode of ignorance. They fail to understand how every living entity is caught up or is controlled by the modes, and by their blind faith in whatever they call as a religion or religious practice, they cannot rise above it. Ultimately, the modes affect every living entity. It is not pertaining only to people who are born to, within Indian subcontinent like that. So immediately by food, we are attracted by the environment, we are attracted everything, in fact, including to music, we are attracted. We can understand what kind of person we are or what kind of modes we had been cultivating all this while. And to that degree, we have to make an effort to rise above these lower modes and move forward. So, music in the modes, what is the music in the goodness? You would see there are a lot of people like country music, which is, mild, soft, gentle musical instruments, or otherwise the sound of the nature, the sounds of the chirping of the bird, the sound of the water trickling through the mountains, or of course devotional music. Devotional music, particularly played on the Vedic instruments, not with the modern day instruments. Then passion, rock and roll. Now, let me do this simple question answer with you. Imagine you're driving a car and you're hearing a very pleasing and soothing music. Or let's say you're listening to Vishnu Sahasranam, or you're listening to the holy names of the Lord. How would you be driving your vehicle? Carefully, attentively, not overspeeding? And let's put it other way around. You're listening to a passionate music, tick tock, tuk tuk, whatever they call rock and roll. The windows of your cars are vibrating, your heart is throbbing, and your head is shaking while you're listening to the music. By what at what speed would you be driving the vehicle now? How many of you say, Prabhuji, minimum 100? Minimum 100. If only my car had a wings, I would have probably flew away from the highway only. Yes or no? So this is how the music affects us. And for ignorance, I don't know if there is any music exists in ignorance. They're totally a gone case. They're a blunder actually. So anyways, so passionate music also refers to the sensual music, which again increases lust. So unfortunately, all today's Hollywood and Bollywood rock and roll songs that you hear of, more or less, they lie in passion or else in ignorance. Hardly anything in goodness. So that's the whole subject matter here. In essence, we have discussed so far about the faith, which leads to different kinds of worship, the kind of food, and now Lord Shri Krishna talks about sacrifices also. So food I have already discussed, so I will skip this table. Let's go and talk about the sacrifices. Krishna says, Arjuna, the kind of sacrifices we performed is also according to the influence of the modes. Let's take a look, verse number 11 to verse number 13. I'll give the summary here about this. And Lord Shri Krishna says, text number 11, Krishna writes, of sacrifices, let's begin with goodness. Of sacrifice is the sacrifice performed according to direction of Shastras or as a matter of duty, just like a person visiting a temple. He visits temple just as a matter of duty. On the platform of duty, he goes because why? Because he understands, the Lord has given me so much, so I should go and offer my respects. Or those who perform worship or who performs some act of charity without expecting any reward is said to be a sacrifice in goodness. What is a sacrifice in passion? Now, when it comes to sacrifice, it can refer to you sacrifice of your wealth, sacrifice of your time, sacrifice of energy, anything. What is a sacrifice done in passion? Whatever a person does who is predominated by passion, whatever he or she does, the very first thing he or she will ask, what will I get? What's in for me? Are you going to announce that this particular event has been sponsored by me? Anywhere in every situation, the person is thinking, how can I fend my pride? How can I get more name, fame, and recognition? That is more of passion influence. What is about ignorance? A complete disregard of scriptures. For any sacrifice, the prominent part of sacrifice is yajna, fire yajna. When you perform fire yajna, of course, there has to be a chanting of Vedic mantras. Then there has to be charity given to the brahmanas. And then everyone is supposed to be fed prasadam. Yes or no? All of us are at least aware of this basic tenets and basic information. What is a sacrifice done in ignorance? There is no regard for scriptures. There is no prasadam distribution, and forget about chanting of Vedic hymns and all that. To give an example, long ago I was invited to one Ganesh Chaturthi festival that happens. That was near to a caste temple in one of the society, and they asked me to come and address their forum, for 15-20 minutes and speak about the subject matter of Ganeshji and who's he and all that. So I was not that willing, but my mentor asked me, go ahead. So I went to the society. When I went to the society, I had just recently come to Pune, so I wasn't aware of much of this Ganesh festival. In North, generally we don't have it around there. So when I went there to the society, I was shocked. There was a temple where Ganesh Murti or idol or the deity was kept, but there was nobody there. And I was wondering, maybe I have come early for the program. The audience has not come, and I thought I was late. But I could hear loud rock music going on. Some Hollywood, Bollywood songs were going on. So I was wondering, looks like there is some parties going on, some birthday party or something. So there was a turn which I had to take, and then there was a lawn. When I turned around, I saw people are dancing, they are partying out and all that, wearing a traditional outfit. So then I could make a connection. They all have come for Ganesh Chaturthi festival. And I was there dumbfounded. There was nothing for a person like me to speak to them. And then the chairman of the society came. He said, oh, Prabhuji, thank you for coming. I want you to speak about Ganeshji. And I said, whom do I speak to about Ganeshji? Does it look like any person have assembled here for Ganesh Chaturthi festival? Are you playing the songs that you're playing for the pleasure of Ganeshji? The songs which are going out? And even there were some food counters. There was no prasadam distribution. The ladies had cooked and they were selling off the food there as Ganesh prasadam. Now, in which mode do you call this sacrifice to be? The chart is right in front of your eyes. You can name it and tell it. Durga, what is that called as Navratri festival, right? At one time I was invited for the Navratri festival. Again, I have had a bad experience, so generally I don't go. But again, I was kind of asked, so I went there. And when I entered that arena, I was shocked. Every hook and corner I saw, there was one boy and one girl together. One boy and one girl together. As if it was a Valentine Day evening or something, and poor Durga was sitting all alone in the middle of all this thing. And there was all kind of Bollywood songs were being played out for the pleasure of Durga. So Durga Devi can also enjoy all the songs which are going on. Again, the same thing. There's no chanting of Vedic mantras. There is no brahmanas to be served or chanting the Vedic hymns. There is no scriptural injunction which talks about it. So at one point of time, the society where I live in means I live in temple, but where we have a center, I asked the chairman of the society, why do you organize these programs? You know what he said? Very interesting, very realistic. He said, these programs are meant for social gathering. So these are the forums where people come and interact with each other. Otherwise, people have got nothing to do with God, Devi, Devta. They don't have any faith. This is just a means for them to come and enjoy. So what is a sacrifice? And on these occasions, door to door, people go and ask for chanda, yes or no? And this is what? So this is for you to think, what about it? Goodness, passion, ignorance, you call it. In case somebody feels truth is unpalatable, so kindly excuse me, but truth have to be told. Now, Lord Shri Krishna further continues the discussion and then bringing us to second subject matter, where Krishna speaks now about austerity in the modes. In order to achieve anything in this world, everyone has to undergo some austerity, just like our IT engineers. They don't feel like going to office. Or poor chaps, they have to go to office. Why? No austerity, no pain, no gain. How would they get their income? So we sacrifice immediate pleasures and comforts for what? For long-term benefit. And that is what is called as austerity. So people who place faith in different things perform different types of austerities. So in the following verses that we're going to read, 14, 15, 16, Lord Shri Krishna talks about beneficial austerity that must be performed by everyone. And this is a description of austerity and mode of goodness. Let's take a look. Very important discussion again, which is more or less we have entirely forgotten the subject matter in today's environment. So the three levels of austerity, or the types of austerity that Lord Shri Krishna recommends. One is the austerity at body level, austerity of body. Second, austerity of speech, and third is austerity of mind. Let's spend a few minutes on each of it. Deva Dvija Guru Pragya Pujanam Sauchamarjavam. Lord Krishna says, austerity of the body consists in pujanam, which means worship of whom? Deva means the Supreme Lord. Dvija means Brahmana or Guru, Pragya, and the spiritual master or superiors. Pujanam, their worship, serving them is the austerity of body. I had Krishna say Sauchyam, which means cleanliness. And I guess in one of the discussions lately, I explained to you how the deodorants and perfumes came into existence, isn't it? Sauchyam, cleanliness of body, taking bath every day, is an austerity of body. And Arjavam, which means simplicity. Krishna had says, Brahmacharyam ahimsa cha shariram tapa uchyate. The practice of brahmacharya and non-violence. So giving respect. I will not be able to go on all subject matter, but let's talk about giving respect. What is austerity of body? To give respect to our elders, to our teachers, to the Supreme Lord. I remember when I was a young boy of the age of Sai Saswat, I saw those times when relatives would meet. The younger ones would bow down and touch the feet of the elders. How many of you remember those good old days? Say yes or no. Raising your hands, I would not be able to see everyone. You can type it into the box. When people would bow down and touch the feet of the seniors. And then when I became the age of Adi Lakshman, then the trend changed. Then I saw people bowing down, but not bowing fully. Now their hands would only reach up to the knees. How many, how many of you saw this trend also? Where people just say pranam, they touch the knees. When I grew the age of, the college going boy or maybe whatever I am today, then the trend became, from a distance they'll say, pranam pitashri, pranam uncle, hi Anna, yes or no? Forget about bowing the head or bowing the body. Everyone has become so erect. God knows that's a wonder. That's the reason everyone has got a back end problem. Nobody bends the back now. That's the reason everyone's back, or what they call as, what is it called? Spinal cord has become erect and stubborn because they have forgotten to bend. So people don't know how to give respect. From a distance, they say, "Okay, pranam, uncle." All right, and like they walk away. So austerity of body is we need to practice. These are the facts that Krishna says, and Saucham I've already described. We'll take at every point in details later on, but some important things. Let's talk about austerity of speech. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyam hitam chayat swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. Please read out the translation.
Austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in the regularly reciting Vedic literature.
Anudvega karam vakyam. This is, I feel, very, very important subject matter to be discussed and to understand how a speech should be. Anudvega, non-agitating. Satyam, truthful. Priya means pleasing. Hitam, beneficial. So a speech should be non-agitating yet truthful, pleasing, and beneficial for others. What do I mean by beneficial for others? When we speak, it should uplift the consciousness of others. It should raise their consciousness from material attachments, from fear, and all the anxieties that people have in this world today. Our speech should not drag their consciousness from sattvagun to rajagun or tamagun. In fact, our speech should raise their level of consciousness from the lower modes to the higher modes. That is the austerity of speech. And how do we cultivate this kind of a speech? Swadhyaya bhyasanam chaiva vanmayam tapa uchyate. By regular recitation of scriptures. Two examples are running into my head right now. One from Mahabharata, another from Ramayana. When Sugriv, who was hiding in, and when he saw two young princes walking towards the mountain where Sugriv was hiding, he sent Hanumanji to disguise himself and find out who are these two men. He was always worried that Vali would send somebody to kill him. So when Hanumanji came in a disguise to meet with to Ram and Lakshman, something very interesting Valmiki Ramayana explains. Valmiki Ramayana mentions when Hanumanji came, and when Hanumanji spoke, he spoke so eloquently, so concisely, so perfectly, so pleasing. You know what Lord Ram said? Lord Ram said, whoever this person is, he must have read and studied all the Vedic scriptures. Only a one who has studied all Vedic scriptures could have such a eloquence, could have such an ability to speak so charmingly, so perfectly. So swadhyaya bhasanam chaiva, when we regularly recite Vedic scriptures, we naturally improve the quality of speaking. I'm not talking about pampering. Everything can be presented in a different context, different way, and that is all affected by mode of consciousness. So by regular recitation of scriptures, one cultivate mode of goodness. That's the first point. Let's come back to Mahabharata. The war has ended. Yudhishthira Maharaj had become the ruler of the whole world, and Vidurji, traveling all over the world, returns back to Hastinapur just to deliver Dhritarashtra. And when Vidurji comes, everyone comes to welcome him. Long story short, Vidurji have taken rest, have been fed sumptuously, and now Yudhishthira Maharaj meets Vidurji and begins to inquire about his well-being, about his travels. And at that point of time, Vidurji asked Yudhishthira Maharaj asked Vidurji, my dear Vidurji, how is Lord Shri Krishna? How is Yaduvamsha? How are they? You have traveled all over, so you must have definitely met Krishna. You would have definitely went to Dwarka. Viduraji became silent. He did not speak anything. Now, why he didn't speak anything? Because Lord Shri Krishna had already concluded his pastimes and he had already gone away. The whole of Dwarka had already got submerged into the ocean, and all the Yaduvamsha had already returned back to Vaikuntha or to the respective abodes in the heavenly planets. Now, it was a very, very sad news. It was a devastating message. If Vidurji would have revealed this truth to the Yudhishthira Maharaj, it could have broken the heart of Yudhishthira Maharaj and all of the Pandavas. So Vidurji, understanding the gravity of the message, did not tell him the truth. It does not mean that he did not, that does not mean that he spoke a lie. He did not answer and he changed the subject matter. Now I know some of you, most of you will be wondering, what does it mean? What does it behavior indicates? This behavior indicates a very simple thing, which Vidurji describes and scriptures describe. This whole discussion is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. Why Vidurji did not tell the truth? Vidurji is not a regular person. He is a highly learned in scripture. He knows suffering comes on its own accord. Yes or no? People fall sick whenever they have to fall sick. Nobody chooses to fall sick. So Vidurji decided, why should I become an instrument of suffering for the Pandavas by revealing them this truth? I should better not tell them. Let the time decide and choose some other person as an instrument to give them this bad news. I should not unnecessarily cause agony and suffering to Pandavas by telling the truth. Truth is as much as valuable as long as it does not take somebody away from absolute truth. If the truth has any value, only as long as the truth does not take a person away from the absolute truth. Knowing the subject matter, Viduji remained silent. Look at the contrary of the situation of the world today. What does the people like to speak most about? What does the people today like to speak most about? The sufferings, the crisis in the lives of others, all bad news. All look at the news channels, even the TV programs are all about this. As if there is no good news happening, and that's the reason person has become so troubled, always agitated, always disturbed, always fearful. And this is one feature of austerity of speech. I although elaborate a little more, but I felt it's too important for all of us to know how our speech has a great influence in the lives of others and our own life, and how we should be careful. These are all the austerities of body, mind, and speech which are performed or can be performed in or by a person influenced by a mode of goodness. Now, what is austerity of mind? Manaprasada samyatvam maunamatma vinigraha bhava samshuddhir iti etat tapo manasamuchyate. Manaprasada, satisfaction, samyatvam. Maunam, gravity, Atma Vinigraha, self control, Bhava Samshuddhi, purification, and this is what is called as austerities of mind. Simple living, just like the mode of goodness, have a particular dress code, have a particular kind of a hairstyle. Well, I'm not indicating everyone has to become a bald. I'm just indicating they have a particular kind of a hairstyle, particular kind of a dress that a person in mode of goodness would wear. The idea is simple living, not to waste too much time in polishing the body. Gravity, always absorbed or always serious about one's own spiritual life, never getting distracted to the subject matter of sense gratification. Self-controlled and purification of an existence is the goal of life. So here everything is fine. One thing which always creates a challenge in the mind is satisfaction. How can we have this feeling of satisfaction in mind? Yes or no? The whole problem arises because of dissatisfaction of the mind. That's the reason person wander from here and there looking for happiness. So how do we cultivate satisfaction? Very easy. Are you interested? Or you all are self-satisfied sages? And probably I'm the only one disturbed here. So how many of you would like to know the secret? How to cultivate satisfaction of mind? So whoever is saying this answer, I'm gonna leave them a private voice note, because I'm not sure if everyone is interested in that way. Or probably you're distracted. So okay, so I'll tell you all this answer later on then, because it doesn't look like many people are responding. Okay, now people are getting into action. So we need to learn to push people to come out of their whatever state. Please read something very beautiful that Prabhupada writes in the purport. How to cultivate satisfaction is something very simple.
Yes, Prabhuji. Satisfaction of the mind can be obtained only by taking the mind away from thoughts of sense enjoyment. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more the mind becomes dissatisfied. In the present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways for sense gratification. And so there is no possibility of the minds becoming satisfied. The best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories. As in the Puranas and the Mahabharata, one can take advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. Hare Krishna.
You remember in the 6th chapter, when we discussed about mind control, we had talked about there are two kinds of association. association of person and association of information. This is the reference from where I spoke about the subject of association of information. And what Lord Shri Krishna says about Prabhupada's writing, when people watch movies, now think about it when you go and watch movies. Don't we all cultivate hundreds and thousands of more desires? If a man sees a hero dressed in a particular attire, he thinks, oh, how great would I look if I had the same dress? And you are shown the flashy cars. Oh, wish I could have such a car. Same holds true for ladies. When they see a heroine dressed in a particular attire and whatnot. So these creates agitations in the mind. So Prabhupada says the best course to engage the mind is in terms of collecting information, because that is what our nature is, to read scriptures. When we read scriptures like Ramayana, we definitely would find role models of courage, role models of sacrifice in the form of Mother Sita, Lakshman, role model of great service attitude and surrender and dedication as Hanumanji, and different examples of great role models. Similarly, for Mahabharata, the role model of dharma, the role model of chastity as Draupadi, Gandhari, Mother Kunti, the role model of courage. So we get strength from the scriptures, not agitation, and that is how the mind becomes satisfied. That's all. Stop watching movies, stop wasting time on TVs and news and reading junk articles. Replace all this thing with Krishna conscious or Vedic scriptures. Life would be all blissful. So ahead, Lord Shri Krishna mentions, in summary, what are the austerities according to the modes. In goodness, person performs austerity with an idea to cultivate transcendental faith. He does not have any expectation for any return. In passion, the austerities are performed only with an idea for respect, for honor, and for worship. Just like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, they performed severe austerities. What did they wanted from Brahma? They wanted powers from Brahma so that they can become very powerful. So those are austerities and passion. Ignorance out of foolishness, entirely against the injunctions of Vedic scriptures. Like there was a demon by the name of Bhaumasura. Bhaumasura was worshipping Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva was not willing to appear to Bhaumasura, knowing that he is a very dangerous person, would ask a very dangerous boon. And then Bhaumasura decided to cut off the different limbs of his body. He started to cut off his fingers, hands, nails, and finally nothing was left in his body was his head and the right hand with which he was chopping. And then he decided, I'm going to cut my head and put it into the fire. So how do you cut your head and put it into the fire? You probably have to burn your head in the fire and then cut it. So he was about to cut his head, and then Lord Shiva appeared. He said, "Kya chahiye tere ko re? Kyun dukhi kar rakha hai?" In other words, what do you want? Okay, I'm pleased with you. Now what do you want? And you know what boon he asked? I want a boon that whosoever head I keep my hand, that person should die. This is called ignorance, self-abuse, and destruction for the whole society. So here's a quick question for all of you. What are the austerities? I hope all of you are able to hear. What are austerities that devotee perform in Krishna consciousness? Classify your answer according to body, mind, and words. What is the austerity of body which is prescribed for us in our spiritual culture that we practice? Anyone? Or else we'll do one thing. I'll conclude the discussion and then I'll ask this question again. I'll request my host to remind us, and then we'll have a raise of hand if somebody wants to speak up the answer for this. Okay? So I'll come back to it in a short while. Let's move ahead and conclude our subject matter for today. So in essence, Lord Shri Krishna says, Arjuna, depending on the motivation, person perform activities, and these motivations are born of the modes. What is the motivation in goodness? Somebody can read, please.
Yes, Prabhuji. Perform with transcendental faith and not expecting material benefits, but engage only for the sake of the Supreme.
That is the motivation in goodness. Now, motivation and passion.
Yes, Prabhuji. Penance performed out of pride and for the sake of gaining respect, honor, and worship.
That is passion.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Now, ignorance.
Penance performed out of foolishness, with self-torture or to destroy or injure others.
And that's how different motivations are born according to the modes. I hope it's all clear now. It's very straightforward. Everything that we are thinking, feeling, and doing is all according to the influencer modes. Then Krishna, this is the third subject matter where Krishna speaks about charity. The innate quality of the soul is to serve, thus we find charitable disposition within every living entity, either to some greater or lesser extent. And according to one's faith, they make efforts to help others. In this section, Lord Shri Krishna discusses the types of charities and explains that to truly benefit people, the charity must be done at least in goodness. So, what is a charity in goodness? Charity given out of duty without expecting a return. Charity which is given knowing who is the recipient of the charity, what is his character, and how that person is going to use my charity. According to time, place, the charity is given, which means the charity which is given with full knowledge. Why I'm doing, giving this wealth or whatever grains I'm donating, what is the purpose and who is going to use it? Is he a worthy person or not? The best charity, Srila Prabhupada writes in this purport, is to give Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness elevates every living entity from the clutches of the modes of material nature. Now that is for goodness. Mode of passion, where an act of charity is done with an expectation of some return, or else where somebody is forced, somebody is told to do a charity. In mode of goodness, person is self-inspired. Person is self-inspired and he does an act of charity. But in mode of passion is where you tell a person, we need some help, you help us. You tell a particular person, then he's compelled or impelled to do an act of charity. That is called as mode of passion, which means grudgingly, not willfully doing it. And results are also accordingly. What is an ignorance? Ignorance means total foolishness, where a person does not keep into consideration about who is the person who I'm giving charity, what is going to do with the wealth, improper place, time, circumstances, and like all this is a charity described in mode of ignorance. So what is the best charity? That is in pure goodness, which is performed only to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is said to be in Shuddha Sattva. So like we have today Gita Jayanti, wherein ISKCON is providing, ISKCON had organized Gita Yajna. We organize Gita Yajna in all the temples for all those who do Gita Dan, those who contribute for distribution of Bhagavad Gita. So every year on the occasion of Gita Jayanti, we do this Gita Dan or Gita Yajna, where we encourage people to contribute in the distribution of spiritual knowledge, which then ISKCON temples all around the year travel around different villages, municipality schools in different places. We have a separate teams who goes out and gives books at some places at free of cost, and some places books as much as discount at 50% or 70%, depending on how much ever is the donation. So this is how Krishna describes the aim of charity. Our aim of action should be always one, that is spiritual advancement. If not, and the person to whom you're given charity is not worthy of receiving a charity, will get a reaction accordingly. If somebody misuses your charity, you also get a sinful reaction for it. And this is how we are trapped by the modes. And through this, we can perceive how people are functioning in this world actually with a mistaken idea of a free will. In actuality, we all are impelled to act according to these influences. And to conclude, the state of freedom begins when we transcend the modes of material nature. And therefore, Lord Shri Krishna, in the concluding section of this chapter 17, speaks about Om Tat Sat. What is Om Tat Sat? Which means it's a phrase which is used as a blessing that your yajna or your sacrifice is successful, completed. Om refers to Vishnu, Tat Sat, Sat refers to eternity. May you be awarded with eternal life in the abode of Lord Vishnu. So now we are actually coming to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 17 concludes Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 18 is an additional aspect, because there is no more question remain to be answered for Arjuna. Just like chapter 2 was a summary of all of Bhagavad Gita which Krishna does, Similarly, chapter 18 is a review of what all Krishna have spoken, just to make sure Arjuna has no doubt. And after speaking chapter 18, Krishna says, any questions? Just like every day our host asks after we do the conclusion of the session, any questions? So this is the culture which is coming from what Lord Shri Krishna taught. So, Om Tat Sat. In other words, all the it is to be understood that all the activities, even those that are performed in goodness, binds a person in karmic reactions. And when you're bound in karmic reaction, pious karmic reaction, we are forced to take birth. Therefore, in Vedic hymns, the God is prescribed, or the God is described as the supreme enjoyer by the three words Om Tat Sat. In other words, the Vedic scriptures encourages us to perform all our activities for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Thus, our sacrifices, austerities, acts of charity, and activities, if are dedicated to the Supreme, done for His pleasure, then such activities what yields permanent happiness. And with this kind of transcendental aim, all our activities becomes liberating, like before eating food, offering to the Lord, any results that we get, utilizing some of it in the service of the Lord. And that is what Lord Shri Krishna describes in 23 to 28 verses. And finally, Krishna concludes, if any activity is performed with ashraddha, anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith in the Supreme, O son of Pratha, it is impermanent. It is called asat and is useless both in this life and the next. All our acts, if it is not done as a service of the Lord, bounds us, forces us to take birth again. Therefore, it is called as asat. In conclusion, Srila Prabhupada writes something very beautiful. In the conditional state, people are attracted to worshipping devatas, ghosts, or yakshas like Kuvera. The mode of goodness is better than the modes of passion and ignorance. But one who takes directly to Krishna consciousness is transcendental to all three modes of material nature. Although there is a process of gradual elevation, if one by the association of pure devotees takes directly to Krishna consciousness, that is the best way and recommended in this chapter. To achieve success in this way, one must first find the proper spiritual master and receive training under his direction. Then one can achieve faith in the Supreme, and when that faith matures in course of time, it is called love of God. This love is the ultimate goal of the living entities. One should therefore take to Krishna consciousness directly, and that is the message of this 17th chapter. Our deliverance or our way for freedom in this material world begins with finding a bona fide spiritual master, taking training under him, how to live our life that gradually sets us free and sets us on the path of liberation. And that is what Lord Shri Krishna establishes. With this, we come to the conclusion of today's subject matter, where Lord Shri Krishna elaborates how faith, austerities, worship, charity, all these acts are done according to the influence of the modes. Thank you all for joining us for our second last episode of this Gita series. With this, for today, we conclude. Hare Krishna. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for concluding this chapter 17 and almost concluding our Gita Essence series. And Prabhuji, I can see Animesh ji would like to ask a question almost from the beginning of the session. So, Animesh ji, you may unmute yourself and ask your query.
Announcements.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I have a doubt, which is more than a doubt. What I'm seeing is in this chapter 17, chapter verse 10, Lord Krishna clearly prohibits the consumption of non-vegetarian food and other kind of obnoxious foods. And if we go to chapter 9, I'll tell you how the question is related. He says that Lord Krishna says he's the knower of the Rig Veda and the other Vedas. Now, coming to the question, there have been a lot of misconceptions being on floated on the internet, where the people say that the Rig Veda encourages the consumption of
Meat
meat.
eating. Correct.
So,
Hmm.
how can this be two contracting things if
Thank
Lord
you.
Krishna himself?
Yes. So if I sum up Animesh's question, does scriptures prohibits meat eating or does scriptures recommends?
No,
Krishna says, Rig Veda talks about meat eating, and Krishna here speaks about not to eat meat, right, Animesh?
yes, correct. Yes, that's right.
Thank you. See, first of all, this all knowledge of Rig Veda, Samaveda, some other Veda talking about meat eating is what is being propagated on the internet.
Correct, correct, Prabhuji.
First. Second thing, we don't know what's a source, even if we don't know what is a Sanskrit, if it is right or wrong, which could be very easily tweaked on the online platform.
Right.
Third, Sanskrit is such an advanced language. The same word has multiple meanings. Just like Atma means the soul, but Atma, according to the dictionary, Sanskrit dictionary, also means body, mind, and the soul. So, how do we understand what Atma is being referred to here in the context? So, Sanskrit language is highly contextual. We need to understand the context in which it is being discussed, and from the context we understand. So you have to understand Sanskrit language and Sanskrit texts were written at the times or discussed at the time but people of very advanced knowledge. Now why people find English as an easy language? Because it's such a layman's language. It's a very rudimentary language, has such a limited vocabulary. That's the reason they think it's easy. So in today's world, our mind, we have become so feeble-minded, and our strength to understand is so minimal, we cannot understand the complexities of the subject matter. And Sanskrit is not an easy language. So those, I know what you're indicating to, those who are picking out the verse and saying this is where it is mentioned, they're first of all not paraphrasing that properly in the context of the discussion. As I said, Atma means body, also the mind, and also the soul. Any layman who just goes with the knowledge of a dictionary would give a meaning according to what he wants to tell people, yes or no? If somebody who wants to find faults in Vedic scriptures would only indicate Atma as a word about body, he would say, no, where does scripture says about soul? Scripture says Atma means body. Look, Atma is referred here. So like that, people misuse and misunderstand. So first of all, we should not accept Google Devta. Google Devta only
Certainly
exists
not.
outside of scripture's domain, and we should not make online Baba as the one's guru. If you have online Baba or Amma as one's guru, or Kora Auntie, the famous question bank where people ask all kinds of questions, you want to get bewildered.
Uh,
So,
th- yes,
okay,
Prabhuji, I was not confused, but I was rather puzzled. Like, how can there be two contradicting
correct.
texts in the same book?
Yes, that's the reason, Animesh, I'm trying to tell. I'm not saying it, I'm not answering this question only for you. I'm answering this question for the larger audience. But these are the things that people do. They go on internet to search for guru. They go on internet to search for answers for their life. So that's the reason I was making a point. So as I said, there's no contradictory statement. It's a contradiction existing in the mind of the person who has written like this because of the
Correct.
lack of comprehension and understanding of the subject matter. Secondly, does scriptures recommend meat eating? Well, scriptures recommend everything because scriptures does not reject anyone. But what scriptures recommend meat eating? Bhagavad Gita does not recommend meat eating because Bhagavad Gita is a scripture meant for mode of goodness people.
Correct.
But there are scriptures for Kali Yuga audience, for a Tamoguna audience, just to bring under to the umbrella of Vedic scriptures to help them understand there is a superior authority, because these people are anyways going to eat meat, anyways going to do an act of prostitution and gambling and whatnot. So that the scriptures are written for this kind of people where the worship of Kali or where the worship of tantric yoga and all that is given. So under the rules and regulation, they do it under a regimen, and gradually they become purified. So this is also another aspect of level of understanding from which we have to look at this whole subject matter. Okay.
Yeah.
And those who have discussed about it without naming that foolish character, Now, what does his faith lies into it? The one who started this whole, started translating Sanskrit now and started converting people from the Sanatan Dharma to his religion. What is his basic religion? What is his practice? That is full of violence, full of ignorance. So how can we believe a person who is himself living a life of mode of ignorance? Okay. So I don't like
Thank you.
controversy, so I avoided taking the name. Otherwise, I take a name and all that less into controversial things. Fine. Yes.
Prabhuji, before taking additional questions, I would like to take your permission to do some quick announcements which are very essential. So may I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Uh, so as all of you are aware that tomorrow we are going to conclude our Gita Essence series, but beyond that, we have planned something else also. So on behalf of Madan Sundar Prabhuji and Evolve Pune team, we are going to extend one more invitation to all of you for a Sunday evening. Sunday evening, we are going to plan a concluding session followed by Kirtan and dinner prasadam also. So those who can visit offline to us to our Hinjewadi Pune center, they are more than welcome. We have already shoot that particular message to your WhatsApp group chats, as well as we will also host it through online on the Zoom link also, and the links will be shared to you. So you just need to give your confirmation whether you would like to attend it offline or online, and so that we can make necessary arrangements. And we would really love to host all of you for that concluding session, which will be followed by the transcendental kirtan by Madan Sundar Prabhuji and his team. Thank you so much. Going ahead, Prabhuji, I could see certain doubts. So Balakrishna Prabhuji has raised this doubt that when we give charity in temples, sometimes government uses these funds. So sometimes certain temples are under the government control, and it may be like it is going to be misused. So how to handle certain situation or
Yeah, that's have kind of made a system things very complicated. But at your side, you did the best part, you know, doing your best to give for the right cause. Even in that, if you have an option to, little study more deeply and see that there are certain institutions, spiritual organizations who may not be in. See, whatever the old historic temples are under the government and not the institutions, you know, particularly those who are run by paramparas. Like ISKCON, all of our Gaudiya Maths, all of ISKCON temples, government has got nothing to do with it, except for that we have to pay taxes. So those who are old ancient temples like Tirupati Balaji, or the temple of our Srirangam, I'm not sure about that much, but our temple in Kerala of Lord Vishnu, the famous temple, what's the name? Padmanabh Swami, like that. So yeah, so those things are there. So, anyways, what can be done? So you make a best decision. You have to do your part of sacrifice. So see, in other words, the best way, which I feel the best and the safest way, is two things. One is distribution of Krishna Prasadam, distribution of prasadam. So that is one charity that everyone should take. That is the safest. At least we do it at ISKCON. There is always a Food for Life program running, where the food is being distributed to hundreds and lakhs of people every day. They do a midday school program also. And second is distribution of Vedic knowledge, like this kind of a Gita Dan. These are, I would say, these are the two safest way for those who have a little doubt or concern about, is it going to the right place or not. All right, because there the result is immediately there. You can go yourself, go and distribute books. You can go yourself and distribute prasadam. So there, whatever I contributed has been properly utilized, if in case somebody has this much concern. Fine. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji? Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, there was one doubt by Swati Mataji, and she was just want to know that if onion garlic is a part of a vegetarian diet, then why onion garlic is not being offered?
Because it's a rajasic item. So those who are trying to cultivate spiritual life, they have to cultivate sattva guna. That's the reason. And there are more details to it, which I would not get into right now. But this whole onion and garlic, they do two things. One, they agitate the mind and they increase sexual craving. These are the two things. So that's the reason the spiritualists, the transcendentalists don't take that. And that's the reason you find Jains also, they do not take onion garlic. Any serious spiritual practitioners would not do that. That's the whole idea. So, see, we are all trying to cultivate spirituality. So, we have to see how our every activity and every action comes in a mode of goodness. That is what will give us sanity of mind and peace of mind. Therefore, we are careful about what we eat, what we hear, how we dress, and everything like that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Next, I can see Aditi,
Adat.
Akriti, you have the question.
Who has?
Akriti, you may unmute your.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Akriti.
Thank you, Prabhuji. I'm so sorry I asked way too many questions, but I wanted to ask two questions. One was that vegetarians are usually on the receiving end of, like, not exactly tossed, but usually, like, for instance, Christians would tell them that.
Somehow your voice is echoing for me, so I could hardly make it out. Is this issue with our sound system? Mother Dipasha, could you understand? Or is this a
No,
problem with
Prabhuji,
my?
it is echoing for me also. So I
Yeah.
was getting some double voices.
It is echoing. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear
Yes.
very well, but the echo is a prominent thing. Hearing is not a problem, but the clarity is a concern. Go ahead, maybe you can speak a little slowly so that maybe will be a little clear. Go ahead.
Sure. So, basically, vegetarians usually like vegans and non-vegetarians have a comeback for every time you try to propose that you should be vegetarians. Like vegans would say that you should not be having dairy products because you, in a sense, torturing the cow. And when you talk about non-vegetarians, they say that in a sense you're also killing plants. So how can you tell us not to be killing animals? Something on those lines. So I have to get around answering like.
Tell them both of you are fools. You don't have any Shastric reference. You're speculating, that's all. So both are extremists. One is a frustrated extremist, and that's our people who have become vegans. They got frustrated with their life. Are they the one who never eat meat? Eat meat? They are the ones who eat meat, who ate a lot of meat. The doctors told them if you eat one more thing, you will die and all that. So they are forced converted vegans. I knew many of such people back in America. Of course, some of our devotees have naturally adapted to the veganism because to animals they torture and all that. That is totally fine. But there's all discussions or the debate about vegans and non-vegetarian doesn't make sense. We are Krishnatarian. Hell with you, whatever you do. We follow what Bhagavad Gita says, period. People gotta speak so much nonsense, what they think. Who told you to be vegetarian, vegans? What is your definition of vegans? Today you're vegan, tomorrow you're non-vegetarian, because anyways, day before yesterday you were non-vegetarian. So you keep on changing your decisions. Why waste time talking to these people? Give them a copy of Bhagavad Gita and tell them if you have any intelligence, read it, then we'll talk to you. कुछ पढ़ेगा कुछ समझ रहा है कम से कम. So don't debate with such people. No point actually.
And Prabhuji, it's usually like I don't know how true is it, so I just want to confirm that you spoke about when you respect elders, you touch their feet. Is it true that your sins also get transferred to the elders simply because you touch their feet, something on those lines, or is that?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful question. So, if you touch the feet, your sins gets transferred and all that. Two things. One is, the aspect of association is contagious on a subtle level. So, just like you're wearing a white cloth, top to bottom, and in the wind, if there is any amount of dirt, your cloth will show that. Yes or no? If there is a dirt in the wind which is blowing and you're standing in the wind, your cloth will get dirty. Yes or no?
Yes,
So one is that on the subtle level. So because these, I'm not going to speak about elders, but for spiritualists it means a lot, because they're pure, they're becoming pure, and getting in touch with any contamination can contaminate them also. So there is a precaution which is considered. So traditionally, around a sannyasi, the disciples would walk around in a circle. There will be a parameter, and nobody can enter that parameter. Only brahmacharis are allowed, and brahmacharis would protect sannyasi like this. I remember, I believe, I'm not sure Mother Dipasha was part of that outing. We had gone to Udupi, and there was this Madhava sannyasi, a very great revered personality.
Yes,
He was doing worshipping, and he just came out of the altar. And one of our congregation kid, he was not very much conscious of all this thing. So when he saw everyone offering out respect, so he also offered respect. So he, being a kid, was very much in front of the altar. And all of us were behind because I told the parents, be at a distance. They don't like to be too much near to them. And suddenly from that altar came out sannyasi. And he went to bow down. And the boy was up in front. He didn't realize. And he also went to bow down. So his body was about to touch him. Suddenly there was a loud halla gulla. Hey, move, move, move. And we all got frightened. What happened? What happened? Then we realized, and the boy was totally scared. What happened? Everyone was pointing at him. Move, move, move. So, they didn't want the body to be touched at all. So, even they didn't want to take a risk at the subtle impurity of that sense. So, these are some of the things. So, that's reason traditionally they would maintain that distance. I mean, God knows what we do now. अभी तो सब कुछ चलता है. We are probably the monks in ISKCON are only surviving on the strength of holy names of the Lord. We go and hug people, we embrace people and whatnot. Forget about touching feet and all that. So yeah, for the sake of preaching, we have to exercise that little bit of emotional connect. So we do it, but traditionally it was not allowed. You can't do it. So these are things that at subtle level it affects.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, Sugriv Prabhu would like to ask a question, but he has claimed already that it is not related to today's session.
So if there is anything else from anyone, then we can go to. If there is nothing, then
Prabhuji, I have a doubt.
Yes, Adila.
Lakshmi,
You said that the renunciation should not be done. So now also some people are doing renunciation. So that is not right.
What? You understood, Mother Dipasha?
something on the renunciation. I believe he was saying that renunciation is not right. Then why people take renunciation?
Yes, sir.
Why
Yes,
people
Prabhuji.
take sannyas?
You are challenging my decision?
No, Prabhuji.
So what do you mean by this question? Go ahead. What's your question now? looks like he's frightened now to ask. What are the Lakshmi? Anything?
Prabhuji, in one of your sessions, you said that renunciation is cannot be done by any people. So then some people are again and again going to renunciation, and many bad things have happened.
Oh,
To my neighbors.
yeah. I mean, fine. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to make a statement. This world is of the cheaters and cheated. There are always cheaters in the world. And those who in their karma are supposed to be cheated, they become the disciples of such cheaters. So that's what can you do? They wanted to be cheated and they become the disciples of such cheaters, and cheaters come to Kaya and they party. That's all. You can't change that situation. So yes, renunciation, path of renunciation is very arduous, very difficult, not prescribed for Kali Yuga. But somehow ISKCON is going on. Is going on till the time we are surviving, we're going on. And I would say it's all because of two things. One is association of sadhus and the holy names of the Lord. That gives us strength, and the association of other sadhus. We're not practicing renunciation all alone. We have our own sangha. If that sangha is not there, then this whole ashram would not be there. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Kamalika
Fine.
Mataji, are you having a question? I saw that you have raised your hand.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. She got muted.
Mataji, please unmute. Mataji, please unmute.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, please.
Yeah, that's a topic about a situation dealing with my 4-year kid. Sometimes he throws tantrums and all that. And at that time, when I get agitated, I get angry. That time, what I am supposed to do? Am I focus? Should I focus on my speech that just now you talked today, or should
Hare
I
Krishna.
the last option, chastise?
See, we cannot change our response overnight. Let me ask this question to you straightforward. When you're put into these difficult situations, do you really think before responding, or you just respond spontaneously?
Spontaneously.
That's the whole point. So we are right now quite grounded in the lower modes of consciousness. So you have to give yourself a benefit of doubt. One aspect of tolerance is also to tolerate one's own faults. So we need to tolerate our own faults, give ourselves a time to become progressive. So don't expect a magic gonna happen. Tomorrow morning you wake up, Kamalika would be a transformed personality. Rajogun Tamagun have disappeared because we discussed 17th chapter the previous evening. Wish that could happen, but Krishna doesn't make it happen that way. Lord wants us to work for it, work for the reward. So you do what is being prescribed for you and give yourself a time. You will gradually see the transition. Because if we are given things very easily, then we take things for granted and we lose value for it. Therefore, Krishna doesn't award us so easily. Fine? So you have to have a patience. As I said, one of the quality of tolerance is to also learn to tolerate one's own faults and pray to the Lord to give the strength to overcome those faults.
Okay, my basic question is that chastising kid is all right, or should we have to focus on controlling that?
I mean, this I guess you should probably ask Mother Yashoda. She was expert in chastising Krishna. So I guess she's the best in this scenario to answer your question. See, physical is a little too much. Of course, physical is also not said entirely no. It's a big subject matter of parenting. I am not an expert. I don't have any direct experience. Some experience because I have congregation to take care, and just because of the scriptural knowledge, I know few things. So I would not say I'm the best in it, but I will speak on the context of psychology, which is one of my favorite subjects. How does psychology defines this? See, kids are great imitators. They imitate what they see their parents doing. So once you begin to scream at them, they will become shameless to your screams. Once you begin to beat them, they'll become shameless to your beating also. Yes or no? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Have you seen while your own growing up stage situation? So for you to teach them, you have to create an environment conducive for their learning what you want to give it to them. First of all, you have to set an example wherein you live by that teaching which you want to impart to them. And then, with that environment as a support system, then instruct them, not immediately, but over a period of time. A very beautiful story. I'll give a quick story and pause, it's getting too late now. There was a family, just like your mother, who had a son who used to eat too much sweets, too much sweets. The mother was really fed up. She took him to Ayurvedic doctor, she took him an astrologer, everyone, but nobody could help the child give up this bad habit of eating sweets always. So finally, after a long, long time, somebody told the mother that there is a great, Ayurvedic doctor who is visiting the town. Please go and visit him. So she went to the Ayurvedic doctor and she told all this thing. Ayurvedic doctor told her one thing. As soon as she said that my son has a bad habit of eating, I want you to please help him fix it. Ayurvedic doctor immediately said, meet me next week, and went away. The lady was surprised. She said, okay, what happened? She thought maybe he's going to go to the forest, find some herbs and everything. So she was happy. She went back. She came back a week later. Now, when she came back a week later, the Ayurvedic doctor told the mother, you don't come. You stay outside. Let me talk to your son. The son entered. And now the Ayurvedic doctor told him something, something. And now the son came out and son told the mother, my things are done. We can go back. So mother was surprised. What's going on? He just hardly was there inside with doctor for 2 minutes. And the next morning, mother was shocked. The son has stopped eating sweets. Now, because the son has stopped eating sweets, the mother really became disturbed. What happened? What magic did the doctor do? So she went running to the doctor this time and she said, what did you do with my son? What medicine you gave him? He's not telling me what you did to him, and he has stopped eating. You know what answer he gave? He said, Madam, when you came to meet me, until then I was also eating a sweet a lot. From last 1 week, I decided not to eat sweet anymore because I am not eating sweet. And when I told him not to eat sweet, that transformed his heart. You got it? Unless
Yes,
we
Prabhuji.
practice, our words would not have the weightage or the strength to transform the heart.
Okay.
And that is what Srila Prabhupada's glory was. When he told to them, stop meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, everyone stopped because Prabhupada had that level of purity. So parenting is a great sacrifice. It can really help you attain great heights and success in spiritual life because you have at least one disciple for sure, depending on the number of kids.
Yeah.
You know, one kids, two kids, whatever, you definitely have one or two disciples. Now your responsibility is to send them back to Godhead. That's the responsibility of mother and father. Now for you to send them back to Godhead, first of all, you have to have your feet into the spiritual world now.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
become serious in spiritual life, everything would fall in its own place. All right.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hari Hari.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, we have still 3-4 questions remaining. So are we going to take now or maybe tomorrow? Or maybe I'll share it with you. Sugriv ji's question as well as Ankita Mataji question is there.
Okay.
And you also asked one question that what are the austerities devotees perform to be asked with
Yeah,
your
that will ask
words.
tomorrow. There's no point now asking. So for those whose questions are not answered is late now, I have another meeting to attend. So please keep your questions. We'll definitely answer it tomorrow. Is that okay? And if you wish, you can write it to Mother Dipasha and she can take your questions first when we meet tomorrow. And if it is really
Prabhuji, we have
pressing and if it is really urgent, you drop her a message, she'll send it to me. If time permits for me in the evening before I go up to rest, or else tomorrow morning, I'll record a voice note and send it to you. Okay? Thank you. And once again, do accept our invitation for those of you who are living in Pune. Do visit us on Sunday evening for the New Year celebrations, precisely. Okay. Because I'm traveling for the next whole 1 week or 10 days. We'll not be having any programs after this Sunday for some time. So that's the reason I thought let's have it on Sunday. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining this session and we look